Well, good evening, everyone. You're listening to Red Pill 78. I am the Corruption Detector, and this is your Red Pill News. We've got lots of news to go over today, guys. There has been a slew of posts. We're going to take a look at some key information from those. Also, the FBI has responded to the letter sent by Representative Jim Jordan and others yesterday, defending Christopher Wray, but throwing James Comey under the bus. And I believe we've got some information related to Christopher Wray's behavior in the posts. Also, it looks like Renegade is sweating under the collar thinking about the release of private information in regards to the Biden-Ukraine scandal. He has sent a private letter to the National Archives claiming confidentiality and presidential privilege, not wanting certain documents to see the light of day. Rand Paul is also out talking about why that might be. And a medical researcher who was working on a breakthrough for CV-19 has been deleted. That's right, and just 2 days after someone on Twitter suggested it might be a possibility. Also, the New York AG is investigating the assault claims against Andy Lack, the head of NBC that just recently stepped down, and it looks like Matt Lauer and others are also in the crosshairs. And finally, is CV-19 bringing the Bible's 10 great plagues? Well, it looks like it just might be. All right, guys, we've got all this and more, so please, everyone, sit back, relax, grab your popcorn, and we'll be right back after a brief word from our sponsor. As people become sheltered in place because of the recent pandemic going around the world, your best friend just might be the solar water heater. Now, the solar water heater is an amazing new device that allows you to heat and boil water outdoors simply using sunlight. Depending on conditions, the solar water heater can heat water in as little as 30 minutes and will work anywhere the sun shines. You can use it to boil water, cook noodles and rice, or sterilize water for drinking. This is your last chance to get it for 15% off on the new 2020 model before they sell out. Take advantage now and give the perfect gift to the outdoorsman or survivor in your life. Please visit www.solarwaterheater.com and use code REDPILL15 for an extra 15% off. Once again, that's www.solarwaterheater.com. And remember, when you support my sponsors, you support this channel. All right, guys, thanks for sticking around. First of all, today, I want to talk about Post 4122. It is a page from the FBI's frequently asked questions on their website. And the question is, can I obtain detailed information about a current FBI investigation that I see in the news? The answer is no. Such information is protected from public disclosure in accordance with law and the Department of Justice and FBI policy. Now, this policy preserves the integrity of the investigation and the privacy of individuals involved in the investigation prior to any public charging for violations of the law. It also serves to protect the rights of people not yet charged with a crime. Now, the reason I draw attention to this is because one of the frequent complaints that I hear is that not enough is happening. People don't see this stuff being reported, or they don't see leaks coming from the current administration or the FBI or the DOJ, and they take that to mean that because they don't actually hear about it or see it being reported on directly, that means that nothing is taking place behind the scenes. Well, I believe that that is the farthest thing from the truth that we could possibly get. Now, Christopher Wray has been a divisive figure in this movement. A lot of people feel that they can't trust him, even though we've been told on numerous occasions to trust him. And I always draw attention to the fact that Christopher Wray has gone to every single FBI field office. He has completely done a changeover in leadership. Don't forget that list of FBI and DOJ employees as well that have been fired or forced out of the administration. I point to that and say it is enough evidence for me to show that there are definitely things taking place behind the scenes, especially things that we are not privy to. Why? Well, because they are ongoing investigations. A law officer worth their salt is not going to release that information to the public because it could compromise the investigation. And everybody knows that we've only got one shot at this. If we compromise these investigations, if we give these people a tip-off, remember, we don't broadcast our moves, we don't tell the enemy what we're going to be doing. If they knew ahead of time, then they could head us off at the pass. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the article talking about the response the FBI gave in their defense of Christopher Wray. All right, now in response to that letter sent by Jim Jordan and others, they released a statement on those Flynn documents that were produced to General Flynn's attorney, which cast doubt on Mueller's prosecutor, Brandon Van Grack, and his compliance with a court order to produce that Brady material, or the exculpatory material. Now, on Tuesday, Fox had reported that Van Grack's failure to produce all of the evidence, including favorable evidence to General Flynn and his attorneys, was a big sign of his malfeasance. Now, the Bureau released a statement on Tuesday, and it said the FBI previously produced those materials to who? The Inspector General and U.S. Attorney Durham. Two very important investigations. Now, the very fact that they provided them to the Inspector General and to the U.S. Attorney would mean that they were definitely in the possession of Van Grack, but it's unclear whether those new documents were actually given to Horowitz and Durham. Now, from the letter itself, it says, with regard to certain documents in the Michael Flynn matter from the 2016-2017 time period that are now the subject of reporting by the press, the FBI previously produced those materials to the Inspector General and U.S. Attorney Durham, the FBI said. The FBI defended Christopher Wray, and they threw the failure of James Comey under the bus. The Flynn investigation was initiated and conducted during this time period under prior FBI leadership, read Comey. Director Wray remains firmly committed to addressing the failures under prior FBI leadership while maintaining the foundational principles of rigor, objectivity, accountability, and ownership in fulfilling the Bureau's mission to protect the American people and defend the Constitution. Now, that reads to me as an utter dismissal of James Comey's prior performance as director of the FBI, talking about failure of leadership, talking about accountability, talking about ownership of that behavior. All of those things fall under the purview of James Comey, not under Christopher Wray. Anybody taking a look at this current situation and the way the FBI has been handled and reworked since Christopher Wray came in, you can tell that things are happening there in a completely different manner. And then I go back to the leaks. There's no leaks taking place. Why? Because the information has been handed off in additional investigations. In the investigation we saw under Michael Horowitz, and the investigation we have yet to be fully revealed under U.S. Attorney John Durham. Now, in a tweet from Technofog that's included here, it includes the information provided in that statement. Now, the Gateway Pundit says that Director Wray is shifting blame in this situation now that the documents have surfaced and people are reporting on it. But the honest truth is that this all did happen under James Comey. And because of the fact that it's an ongoing investigation, Christopher Wray and others in the FBI would not have been able to comment on it in session with Congress during testimony, and they certainly would not have been putting it out in the public domain in the form of tips to places like the New York Times and the Washington Post. Mueller's so-called investigation allowed for the Justice Department to conceal all these documents in Flynn's case, but now it's unraveling since AG Barr has appointed the new U.S. Attorney to take over Mueller's cases. This brings me back to another post I want to go over. Let's take a look. All right, now post 3992, and this is not the only time this information is given, but it says Mueller was designed to take in evidence needed to expose the deep state. Mueller, DOJ, evidence ongoing investigation. It was necessary for his investigation to take in this evidence, which would then be used to expose the deep state. Now, whether or not Mueller knew what he was doing, or if he thought that he was simply taking in this evidence so that Flynn could then be prosecuted, that's up to interpretation. I think that it was actually twofold. I think that Mueller and his investigation, they held on to this information on purpose. They were hoping that Flynn was going to be tried and convicted prior to the end of the investigation, but obviously that never happened. Something was holding that back. But Mueller, working with Brandon Van Grack under the original Russia collusion investigation, would have had that information. And then Brandon Van Grack taking over the actual Flynn prosecution, he certainly would have had that information. But it got stonewalled during the Mueller investigation, and then Van Grack held it back. So now we know that the FBI provided the information, they passed it along, and it's up to the DOJ to actually pass that information on to the defense because they're the ones who are prosecuting. The FBI is merely investigating. As far as I'm concerned, the FBI under Christopher Wray has done their job, and now the ultimate blame lies with Brandon Van Grack because he was the portion of the DOJ overseeing the Flynn investigation. He is the one who failed to pass the evidence along. And now that that information is in the public eye, Flynn will be exonerated. All right, next in this tweet from my buddy Steve Lundgren, he shares a story from True Pundit, and I definitely wanted to touch on it. But in this exclusive story, they say that John Durham has resurrected the Clinton Foundation probe, and he says that the feds are disclosing the DOJ's renewed focus on the widespread charity and vax fraud. Now, the thing about True Pundit is that it is an anonymous source, so there's no supporting information, but I think that this actually is accurate. So let's go ahead and take a look at the story. Now, an anonymous tipster has told True Pundit, apparently, that John Durham has a newly minted focus of putting the schemes of the Clinton Foundation back under the federal microscope. Top-level federal sources detailed just when and what is happening surrounding these surprising revelations and how it relates to what is playing out with the corrupt CDC, FDA, NIH, and White House CV-19 gurus Dr. Fauci and Birx, and CDC Director Robert Redfield, who are all linked to the shady operations, and they're all associates of the Clinton Foundation. Now, remember, we had U.S. Attorney Huber, who apparently had gone to the foundation with a couple of DOJ planes. He had gotten a lot of information and taken all those documents and then apparently turned it all over to John Durham. Based on the information we have confirming that information was passed on to John Durham, I think this report is probably more than accurate, and it's just going to be a little bit of time before we finally determine exactly what's going to happen. Justice is coming for the Clintons, mark my word. Now, finally, after 4 years, Renegade has inserted himself into the Russia-Ukraine fiasco. He has sent a private letter to the National Archives. He's claiming confidentiality to not release Biden-Ukraine documents. Well, why is it that finally now, after 4 years, he's suddenly interested in this sordid affair? While Democrats have been denying and protecting their guilt in creating and advancing this Russia hoax, there is strong evidence that suggests Renegade himself was likely aware of the probe. Now, Fox News has obtained a letter from the office of President Barry Obama and the National Archives and Records Administration, which manages all those presidential records. And now, 4 years after leaving office, he's suddenly getting involved. He sent this letter off in March, and arguably they did not want Fox News to obtain a copy of it. But nonetheless, the letter bashes Senate Republicans in their investigation of Hunter Biden's dealings with Ukraine. Don't forget, Hunter is the son of Joe Biden, the presumptive Democratic nominee for president at this time. And he joined the Ukraine company Burisma's board during Renegade's administration. Kind of a strange coincidence. Now, the letter to NARA is Barry's response to Republican Senators Chuck Grassley and Ron Johnson. They sent a request to the Obama Records Administration looking for information on those Ukraine-related meetings. That was back in November of 2019. Now, the letter says the senators' inquiry is an effort to shift the blame for Russian interference in the 2016 election to Ukraine. Now, arguably, we've gotten plenty of information since that time, which would show that Ukraine actually was involved. And I believe we have Ukrainians stating as much, saying that they wanted to make sure that Hillary was the winner. Why would he be so defensive at this time? Now, the office of the former president states that, I believe, 122,880 pages of presidential records have been produced in response to the special access requests from the White House and Congress. I like that little bit of information. It's not just Congress that's looking. The White House itself is also looking. So a few more records, how could that hurt? Well, for some reason, the former administration wants the inquiry to end now before that information gets out into the public. It said this use of the special access process serves no legitimate purpose and does not outweigh or justify infringing confidentiality requests that all presidents have sought to protect. It sounds to me that they are very aware of the information that would be contained in those final records that have yet to be released, and the information contained in those records would be extremely bad for the former president. It would show that he had direct involvement with what was happening in Ukraine, probably direct knowledge of Hunter Biden and his conflicts of interest, and I have to laugh when he says that it is based on a Russian disinformation campaign. After everything that's been done, the evidence that's been brought forward to show that the Russian disinformation campaign campaign is a pipe dream. It is an absolute fiction. Our former president is going to call back to that and use it as an excuse to not have his confidential records released out into the public awareness. Now, Rand Paul is also commenting on this, stating that there have been rumors going around Washington for quite some time which state that Barry had direct knowledge of what was taking place and that the information in those records is not going to be good for his legacy. So I think this is another one we're going to want to watch with a careful eye. In fact, Rand Paul said precisely there could be a smoking gun, stating that Barry knew about the Biden-Ukraine issues. He knew all about the corruption of Hunter Biden and the corruption of Joe Biden, and more than likely, the corruption within his own administration. He said, yeah, there's been rumors for quite a while that people within the Obama administration knew about the corruption issues with Hunter Biden, that they warned the vice president and maybe even the president about it. I think there could be a smoking gun, that there's actually a record of some of these complaints that were going on at that time. So this is most likely the information contained in those records that Barry and his cohorts does not want released to the public. Now, I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. I think that if we get those records, it's going to show the direct involvement of these people in all of those schemes, in the fleecing of Ukraine, and in the money laundering of American taxpayer dollars. Well, this doesn't look the least bit suspicious. A medical researcher on the verge of making a very significant CV-19 breakthrough has lost his life with a projectile weapon. Bing Liu, a medical researcher at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine, was said to be on the verge of making a very significant CV-19 finding. Well, he was found deleted over the weekend in what appears to be a murder-suicide. Right. Now, when he was found, it says that he had been wounded in the head and the neck, and an hour after that body was discovered, a second person, Hao Gu, who is 46, was found deleted as well inside a car less than a mile away, and it's been reported that the two knew each other. Now, he was specifically on the verge of making a very significant finding toward understanding the cellular mechanisms that underlie CV-19 and the cellular basis of the following complications. We will make an effort to complete what he started in an effort to pay homage to his scientific excellence. What do you want to bet? That his research stops right there, the same way he was stopped himself. Now, I want to show you this eerie prediction that was put out just prior to his deletion. Now, here in a tweet from John Cardillo, John Murder Hornet Cardillo, he says, look at the dates. What the effing F? Now, here is the prediction from Thick Chungus. Doctors at UPMC Pittsburgh have released today they found a CV-19 cure and are submitting it to the FDA approval and safety testing. So how much do we want to bet that one or more will mysteriously die? That was at 1:26 p.m. on the 2nd of April. And here we go. Just a month later, CV-19 in Pittsburgh, a researcher killed in apparent murder-suicide, was close to making very significant findings related to CV-19. How eerie is it that this researcher releases the findings, and then just a month later, he's no longer with us? Now, the thing about it is, I don't think that this person has any more inside information than any of us, but I think that this is a comment on the state of our world. You cannot go up against the machine, do it publicly, and then expect to come out unscathed. I also find it interesting the way that they are now reporting on the findings. Thick Chungus said that there was an actual cure that was found and it was submitted to the FDA, but now the reporting at the time of his death states that he was apparently close to making very significant findings, not that he actually had made significant findings. So is that information actually with the FDA? Has it already been covered up? I really hope that something happens with this man's findings and that it is released to the public, but something tells me this is the last we're going to hear about it. Now, it was reported just yesterday that NBC chairman Andy Lack had been moved out of the Peacock network. It wasn't actually specified if he left of his own volition or if he had been forced out. Well, the news comes today, just 24 hours later, that the New York Attorney General is investigating NBC News over claims of historical, certain types of assaults, and the Daily Mail is reporting on it. Now, apparently more than a dozen women have been interviewed by officials from a civil division department dubbed the Weinstein Unit, following its investigation into the disgraced movie producer. Now, in an exclusive interview with the Daily Mail, an NBC anchor, a former NBC anchor named Linda Vester, said she was one of the women interviewed about the alleged violations at the network. She said, "They wanted to know as many details as I could offer about what Andy Lack's involvement was in orchestrating a public response against me and a defense or cover-up. He was one of many." Now, apparently, the unit has been looking into these claims of harassment and assault and discrimination at the network for at least 6 months, so it's been going on for a while. Now, this same woman was interviewed in January in regards to her alleged assault at the hands of ex-Nightly News anchor Tom Brokaw, America's newsman. Here is a picture of Andy Lack. That is the guy who was removed yesterday. I believe this right here is Linda Vester. Another person who is believed to have spoken to this Weinstein unit is former Fox News anchor Megyn Kelly. Now, Megyn Kelly's rep would not confirm her involvement or her interview by the Weinstein unit, but Vester said that she had an hours-long session with investigators, and she was also asked about the cover-up culture at NBC. She said, "They were interested because all of us had information about women who had been harassed or retaliated against, or both, or were discriminated against. They gave interviews by phone or in person." She added, "They asked me to retell not just the initial harassment I had experienced, but also more importantly, they wanted to know about Chairman Andy Lack and what I knew about his involvement in retaliation against me by NBC News once I came forward with my story." Now, we've already named Tom Brokaw. We know that Andy Lack is involved. Don't forget that in 2017, Matt Lauer, the long-term host of the Today Show, was fired after a former staffer came forward to say that he had committed a certain act against her at the Sochi Olympics in 2014. NBC said they had never heard of any claims against Matt Lauer, but Vester says that his predatory behavior was an open secret. There are others that are involved in this investigation. NBC is probably going to be in a lot of hot water, and the Weinstein unit is out for blood. I look forward to seeing the wicked fruit that is bared from this investigation. Here we have Andy Lack and Matt Lauer together, and we also have plenty of documented evidence from people like Ronan Farrow who have looked into this story for a long time. Now, Vester says she knows of at least a dozen people who gave interviews to this state's attorney's office about the alleged misconduct, and she said that there are still additional bad guys left at NBC, but that she's worried they might try to pretend that senior management has rooted all of them out with that final ousting of Andy Lack. So again, I am very interested to see how this inquiry plays out. I think considering the current climate and what happened with Weinstein, I think it's a pretty good chance that other people involved at NBC are going to find themselves in the wrong side of a courtroom. All right, and finally, is CV-19 bringing the Bible's 10 great plagues? Here we have a picture of a murder hornet, which recently came on the scene after arriving in Washington. We've got the first plague. It's water to blood. Now, Lake Meek in Turkey's central Konya province has dried up, and the few remaining puddles in the lake bed have turned red due to microorganisms present in the water. We also have another lake in a Mexican village that suddenly turned bright pink. They think there it could be a combination of sodium and unusual bacteria and gunpowder chemicals. But we also have a plague of frogs in the English town of Chesterfield. Apparently, frogs are frightening people by emerging through their sinks and their drains. And then also in Florida, toxic toads are invading people's front yards. They open their door in the morning, and apparently there's 100 baby frogs all over the place. We also have a plague of lice and gnats. A few months ago, a lice infestation hit Washington State University in Pullman, east of Seattle, and lice also popped up in a school public system in Quincy, Massachusetts. There are gnats as well, an outbreak of biting gnats, black flies in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We have a plague of wild beasts. Rabbis have interpreted the word of the fourth plague, Arav, to mean either wild animals, hornets, or mosquitoes. Well, we've got the hornets. The giant hornets were spotted for the first time in America in December. Another gift from Asia, just like CV-19, and they've killed upwards upwards of 50 people in China and Japan each year, and they also attack honeybees, which is bad for the pollination of our fruits and vegetables. We also have a plague of stink bugs that have emerged in the U.S. several years ago, which will soon sweep the nation yet again. And the Bible talks about hordes of wild animals roving all over the country. Animals have started taking advantage of cities as they enter lockdowns during the CV-19 pandemic. From New Delhi, India to Buenos Aires, Argentina, groups of animals including deer and lemurs have started to come out and explore, and pigs are taking over the streets of Paris. And then we've got the Plague of Pestilence. CV-19 may force farmers to kill and throw away livestock. Millions of farm animals are at risk of being culled as the U.S. food chain supply dries up. We don't have a plague of boils yet, but that's something we're going to want to keep an eye open for. We do definitely have a plague of hail. There is a large hailstorm that recently hit northeast Wichita, Kansas, and it apparently dropped hail the size of tennis balls. That is a pretty big thing. That also hit northwest Arkansas. We do have a plague of locusts that hit East Africa, and then we also have the plague of darkness, 3 days. That's only sort of. Now, I can tell you right in Tennessee, just the other day, there was a large storm that came through, and there are some people there who will be without power for up to 2 weeks. And finally, death of the firstborn. That one has not hit us yet. Now, by and large, children are not very susceptible to CV-19, but when you think about the fact that it affects the elderly, wouldn't they be considered the firstborn since they were born before our parents or ourselves? I don't know, guys. This is kind of a fun little article, but if you want to take a look at this and think about the fact that we've been told it will be biblical, it actually kind of looks like it is when you put all of these together. All right, guys, it really does seem to me that the handcuffs are starting to tighten on the people who tried to remove a duly elected president and unseat him from power. We are so close every single day. It gets better, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the future holds. As always, this has been Red Pill 78. I am the Corruption Detector, and this was your Red Pill News. Good luck, everyone, and God bless. Hey guys, one more thing. It's Red Pill. I just want to say thank you once again to everybody that has helped to support the channel. If you'd like to get involved, you can go ahead and check the show notes in the pinned comment and the description. There's always good information in there. I've got a couple of backup channels. I ask that you go ahead and subscribe to them because if anything does happen here, I will start publishing there. And if you want things like merchandise or anything else, there is a bunch of information that you can find right below this video. All right, guys, thank you very much, and I'll see you tomorrow.